So you may be wondering, why do I need to study communication? Everyone communicates, right? Well, there's a lot that goes on in communication. In today's world, good communication is becoming more and more important. And this is what Chapter 1 brings us. In this chapter, we'll define communication. We'll explore why we communicate. We'll look at how we communicate overall, the components of the communication process, some common myths that are out there regarding how we communicate, and look at what makes someone a competent communicator. So first, let's look at the definition of communication. When you think about communication, the overall goal is to connect, to have some sharing. In fact, the root word of communication, communicare, which comes from Latin, means to share. Think about it. Communication also has the same root as community. So communication itself can be defined as the simultaneous sharing and creating of meaning through human symbolic interaction. Now that interaction may be verbal or nonverbal. It can be face-to-face, it can be over some form of technology like the telephone or maybe a computer. But no matter what, remember, the overall goal of communication is to achieve shared meaning, to make a connection. The need for that connection can be explored through Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The chart on the right shows that hierarchy. Maslow stated that people must have their basic needs met in order to address the higher needs. So let's start at the bottom. Let's look at the physical needs. Recently, my friend had a baby, and I went to go visit her, her husband, and her new baby. Keep in mind, this baby was less than 2 weeks old, but already was communicating about her physical needs. She was hungry, and she started moving her head around on her dad's chest. And he automatically knew, hey, that's her way of communicating that she's hungry. So even as early as we're born, we are already communicating about our physical needs. Everything from I'm hungry to I'm tired to hey, somebody needs to change this diaper. As soon as our physical needs get met, we can go on to the next level. Here, we can talk about our instrumental and task needs. So in the early days of humanity, there is a big desire to keep yourself safe, whether it be from random animals that might attack you, from enemies. And we realized very early on that when we interacted with others, when we communicated and shared meaning and shared space, we were safer. And that safety helped humanity thrive. And we were able to build civilizations, to grow food, to explore new lands, to dive deep into the sea, go into space. We were able to do all of these amazing different tasks that probably wouldn't have resulted if we didn't feel safe. So yes, while we can get our physical needs met through communication, we can even get our instrumental and task needs met through communication. Being in college, being successful, how you learn what is successful and what is not so successful is communicated to you, either directly or indirectly. Let's move up again to relational needs. Communication helps us initiate, develop, and maintain our relationships. Even when you get into conflict, it was probably the result of bad communication. And to get out of that conflict, you're going to need some good communication. So when it comes to this idea from Maslow about being loved, about feeling like we belong, those relational needs that we have as humans, that's something that we can get through communication. Whether it be face-to-face or even through social media. I know a number of people who join groups online because they say, hey, these people are like me in some way. I feel like I belong. Let's move up again to identity needs. Communication can even help us express ourselves as unique individuals. Our identities are created and even recreated as we talk to other people. We start to realize who we are and who we aren't the more we start to interact with others. At some point in your life, someone probably told you, hey, you're really smart, or hey, you're athletic, or you're good looking, or you're talented. And those different concepts, those different ideas, became a part of who you are, of how you see yourself. And eventually you said, yeah, I am athletic, or I am good looking, thank you very much. And lastly, we have our spiritual needs. All humans, no matter what, have this desire to figure out, well, what's my purpose in life? Why am I here? Why are we all here? Some people get their spiritual needs met through religion. Some by diving deeper into their values and beliefs. Some people chase after their great passion, whether it be their career or their family. But no matter what way you look at it, even our idea of self-actualizing is a result of communication. Either we just keep asking the questions, communicating those questions out to other people until we get answers, or when we have our answers, we communicate, well, this is our way of doing it. Again, it's one of the ways why we communicate. Now, Maslow isn't the only researcher that we're going to talk about, because we also have Ogden and Richards. Ogden and Richards wanted to know, well, how do we understand each other? How do we make meaning out of what one person says to the other? How do we interpret it? And they came up with what is called the semantic triangle. They said there's a referent, a symbol, and a thought that all connect to each other. Let's start off with the referent. The referent is simply what you want to communicate. Let's say, for example, you're looking at a table, and that's the thing you want to communicate out to somebody else. Well, you're going to need a symbol, something that represents the thing or idea. If you look at the English language, your symbol could easily be table. That word in itself is arbitrary if you think about it. Someone decided, I'm going to call this thing a table, and everyone agreed. In a different language, for example Spanish, the symbol is mesa. So you have the thing that you want to communicate, you have the symbol for how to communicate it out to the world, and then you have to have your thought. The thought is the connection between the referent and the symbol. Keep in mind that the thought is part of the communication process that we're going to talk about a little bit later with encoding. Because yes, you can see that thing, but maybe not know the right symbol. Or have a symbol, but not sure if that's the right referent for that particular symbol. So the thought really is a connection about how you want to take something that you understand and help somebody else understand it. Up to this point, we've looked at the communication definition itself, why we communicate, the motivation that we have for it, and how do we communicate? How do we understand what someone else is telling us or non-verbally communicating out to us? Stay tuned for part 2. We're going to talk about the communication process as a whole. And don't forget, we still need to talk about those communication myths and what makes somebody a competent communicator.